Live on the stream. Right, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'll just wait while everybody gets settled. I'm told that the live feed is now up and running, and we've got people joining us online, and I can tell you there are nearly 700 people had signed up, which is no small feat in itself. Just in terms of the administration of the event and the agenda, to the best of my knowledge, there are no fire alarms scheduled for the next 2 hours. But if the alarm does go off, then head straight out through the door out into Smith Square. The facilities are round the front of reception and then turn right. So anybody who wishes to avail themselves of the facilities, please head in that direction. And it goes without saying that we are hugely grateful for the Centre for Social Justice for hosting this event. I had the privilege of being on a panel on behalf of Lord Nash a few weeks ago, and when Nina said, "Simon, is there anywhere that you think we could host an event in London?" I said, well, let's approach the CSJ, and I have to say they could not have been more accommodating, more supportive, and you will see in some parts what I would describe as a little bit of sticky tape, which has been used to put together a backdrop, but it's holding up, and I think it looks pretty good. If it does start to fall during the course of the day, then please let's not worry about it. Let's just hope the tape remains sticky. Right. So I'm just going to talk you through the agenda. So very quickly or very shortly, I'll go on to opening remarks, then to be followed by Almudena. Not bad, not great, but not bad. We'll then talk about, from Ofcom's perspective, whilst this research was commissioned, and of course this is an Ofcom commissioned report. I'll then ask Nina to come and give an overview of Protect Children and the context of the research. And then the main event, and I will put it down as the main event, is Tegan Insol, who will be presenting the findings and dealing with some Q&A in the last 10 minutes of her presentation. For those colleagues that are joining us online, I am sorry, but the Q&A will have to come from the room rather than from online delegates. And then we will then have a panel discussion. It's a formidable panel of experts in front of you. They are already on their high chairs. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Danny, particularly, you've travelled a long way to be here. And obviously Dan and Mike from Ofcom. And then after the panel discussion, we'll just wrap up with some final words. And I'm sure at 3 o'clock there will still be plenty of opportunity to engage with the subject matter experts, with Nina and her team, before everybody says au revoir. So, just from my perspective, just some opening remarks. So, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, because I'm looking out on a huge number of friends and colleagues, welcome to the Centre for Social Justice, and thank you for joining us both in person and online. Your participation shows your commitment to children's safety, especially in the digital space. We are here today because Ofcom funded the Protect Children team, a small NGO that I am hugely privileged to advise, to produce new research. Tell me more about tech, which builds on their already impactful body of previous work which continues to have a significant impact on the global online harms ecosystem. For a small organisation, what they do, in my opinion, is quite incredible. But today's report is apposite amid the growing global debate about children's access to social media. And I would encourage you to consider the new findings that you are going to be hearing about today in the context of Protect Children's Tech Coalition funded research, which was published 25 months ago. Now you might be thinking, Simon, why are you now going back to a report that's 25 months old? I think when I tell you about the report, you will appreciate why I'm specifically referring to it. Because this report was particularly significant because it shifted the focus from the dark web into the open web, revealing how everyday social media and tech platforms are leveraged by offenders. A staggering 77% of the surveyed offenders for that research encountered child sexual abuse material on the open web, publicly accessible sites and on social media, rather than the hidden corners of the internet. The report found that the open web acts as a funnel, and about 41% of offenders indicated that they had found information on the open web that taught them how to access more extreme material in other parts of the internet. Offenders frequently used mainstream social media platforms and messaging apps not just to find content, but to groom victims and network with other offenders. The research highlighted how offenders exploit platform features such as recommendation algorithms and hashtags to discover and distribute harmful content. The recommendations probably won't surprise you. The report concluded with actionable steps for the industry to move from a reactive response to a proactive, protection-based response, incorporating protections at the product development stage rather than as an afterthought, improving tools to identify grooming behaviours and the sharing of links to harmful content, not just the images themselves, encouraging tech companies to share signals, data points about bad actors, so that an offender banned on one platform cannot simply move to another. And then implementing friction that makes it harder for users to search for or stumble upon illegal content. Now, as you listen to Protect Children's latest research findings in Tell Me More About Tech, I'll leave you to determine how much has changed in the last 2 years since the Tech Coalition report was published. It is now my pleasure to invite Almeida to present on behalf of Ofcom, the commissioning body. Almeida.
Thank you. Thank you, Simon, and thank you everybody that is here today on a lovely spring afternoon. Today is an important day. It's the National Child Exploitation Awareness Day, and it's a moment to reflect on one of the gravest and most devastating crimes we face online, the sexual abuse and exploitation of children. Each year, millions of images and videos depicting child sexual abuse circulate online, causing profound and lasting harm to victims and survivors. This harm does not end when the abuse stops or when an image is removed. It endures often for a lifetime. And despite sustained efforts by government, regulators, law enforcement, and industry, the scale, accessibility, persistence of child sexual abuse material online remains a major global challenge. At Ofcom, as the UK online safety regulator, tackling this abuse is one of our highest priorities. The responsibility is immense, and the stakes could not be higher. To meet this challenge, we must equip ourselves with the strongest possible evidence, intelligence, and insights to guide our work and hold online services to account. Crucially, that work starts with listening. First and foremost, it means listening to the victims and survivors of this harm. Their courage in sharing their experiences is invaluable. Their testimony grounds our policy decisions in reality, and it reminds us of why this work matters and why urgency is not optional. But listening must also extend beyond those harmed to understanding how harms manifest online and how they are enabled. That includes understanding how offenders behave, how they operate, and how they exploit technology to facilitate these crimes. Without that understanding, our intervention risks being reactive, partial, and ineffective. And this is why Ofcom has commissioned this new research by Protect Children, a leading NGO advocating for the rights of every child to live free from sexual violence. Collectively, we identified that there is a significant gap in the evidence base, and in particular, very little research directly examines how active offenders use online service to exploit children. So before I progress, I just want to say huge thanks to the Protect Children team, because the work that they do is really important. So thanks to Nina and thanks to Tegan for the work that you have led. And thanks to my team at Ofcom as well that has led this work. So thanks to Philippa, Mike, Priya, and Joe, and the rest of the team. And I want to stop one moment here because it is really hard work that you do. It's often looking in the face at the worst of humanity. So thank you so much. So back to this research. The research is a survey, it's a global survey that has reached over 20,000 respondents all over the world who have used known keyword terms to identify those that are looking for sexual abuse material on the dark web. And the study provides a rare and direct insight into the perpetrator's behavior and attitudes and the use of technology. So I would say that the findings are disturbing, but sadly maybe not totally surprising, and they are also essential. So we'll hear much more later about the actual findings. But one of the things that the research shows first is that the early exposure to pornography and child sexual abuse material is a major risk factor. And alarmingly, many first have encountered CSAM accidentally, without actively looking for it. So this matters because it reinforces what we already know, which is that exposure itself can be a pathway to harm, normalization, and therefore escalation. It underlies the importance of preventing children from encountering harmful content in the first place. Second, the research shows that perpetrators access this type of content across multiple online environments. This tells us something that is critical as well, which is that displacement is real. So when we enforce safeguards in one service, the perpetrators will move along and try to adapt their behaviors. So our collective response needs to really address this challenge. Third, the research highlights how design choices shape the behavior. So with perpetrators seeking out services that maximize anonymity and minimize friction. So, and this is not accidental, and it is a direct consequence of platforms' design choices. Fourth, and perhaps most concerning, the findings show that barriers to AI-generated CSAM are worryingly low, and they are getting lower. So with an increasing number of respondents that have viewed or created AI-generated CSAM. And this material is not only being generated individually, it is being commissioned, exchanged, and monetized, creating a strong incentive for the production and the continuous production and sharing of this content. So the research is worryingly, all the results are very disturbing is the word that I use. But on the positive side, it also shows that we can and we must make a difference here. First, some respondents recalled encountering warning messages when searching for CSAM. And while some ignored these messages, a significant proportion of those that encountered the messages reported that they prompted them to reflect about their own behaviors and to change those behaviors. It shows that when you design this type of deterrence measures well, it can actually help to disrupt the harm. And I think importantly as well, at the end of the survey, participants were signposted to perpetration prevention resources. and they had to, they were put onto the redirect program. And more than 2,200 respondents actually clicked through. And many of those that clicked through and filled the survey actually said that it made them reconsider their behavior and seek support. So it shows that prevention can happen, and this is a good example of prevention in action. So what does that mean for Ofcom and the wider system? So from our perspective, under the Online Safety Act, tackling the spread of child sexual abuse material is one of our top priorities. And over the past year, we have set clear expectations through the codes of practice on what we expect services to do when it comes to dealing with this material. So we are, under our codes, requiring services to reduce the risk of CSAM appearing in their services and to act to swiftly remove it when they have become aware of it. That includes also using automated hash matching technology to detect CSAM and URL detection for known CSAM. And our codes also recommend the use of warning messages for those that are looking for this content. Further, our protection of children codes goes further, requiring services to implement robust age checks to prevent children from accessing harmful content. And that includes pornographic content, which often is a pathway to sexual abuse material and can then lead to other more extreme material. And we are consulting, we know that the job is not done, consulting on additional measures, including how to ban the users that are known to be sharing this content. And when the service falls short, we are ready to act. So we have already an enforcement program in action, and we have already taken action against those that are known to be hosting this type of content, like some of the file sharing platforms. This work is not easy, and it cannot be done by one organization alone. So we need to all work collaboratively together. And it requires deep global collaboration because of the very nature of the crime. It requires regulators, governments, law enforcement, civil society, industry, and international partners coming all together. This research from Protect Children is a powerful contribution to the collective effort. It strengthens our evidence base, it sharpens our understanding of risks, and it reinforces a simple truth. Online safety must be designed in, not bolted on after the harms have occurred. So on this National Child Exploitation Awareness Day, our message is clear. We will continue to listen to the victims and survivors. We will continue to demand more from online services, and we will continue to use the full force of our powers to protect children online. Because preventing this abuse is not just a regulatory obligation, it is a moral one. So thank you very much. Thanks.
Amadina, thank you very much indeed. It's now my pleasure to introduce my friend, Protect Children's CEO, Nina Vaarinen-Valkonen, the visionary driving force behind the organisation. Nina.
Thank you, Simon. Distinguished guests, friends and colleagues, I'm super proud to stand here today and share our Protect Children latest research and the findings of Tell Me More About Tech project. And thank you, Ofcom, for funding it. We have 700 approximately registered people online, so welcome. And I'm going to do a little bit introduction of who we are. Small NGO from Finland, but working internationally, and a little bit background. So I founded Protect Children 6 years ago, and my colleagues asked to say it again. So when I turned 50, I didn't buy a motorcycle, I didn't divorce, so I established this NGO. So thank you. it was not on my speech. So when I founded this, I wanted to build a new NGO, efficient NGO, a different NGO, a powerhouse to end all forms of child sexual abuse and exploitation. It's a bold goal, but I mean, people are ending climate change, so we want to end child sexual abuse and exploitation. I wanted to do things differently in a powerful, efficient way, using research-based holistic method. So not just only working in one sector, working in many sectors. We were a risk investment for funders because I just started it without no funding. And then there were two women who wanted to change the world. So I think we have managed to do a little bit of that. So I want to thank you, every funder who has trusted us, every colleague who has worked with us as we have grown. And today it's a day, you know, one of these days, like, I want to pinch myself, and maybe the team as well. And I'm so proud of my team, not my team, our team, amazing team of powerful women, kind, inspirational women that I'm so fortunate to lead. And of course, we have also gender equality, because we have our expert advisor, Simon Bailey, whose picture is in our cupboard. So throughout 6 years, we have done research, we have piloted, we have evaluated our interventions, therapeutic interventions, and all our work to make sure we respect our values, we respect our mission and vision. And now, actually, we have founded like four core areas of work. First priority always is serve and support victims and survivors as well as their families. That's kind of really very strong. Everything we do is developed in a way that it's survivor informed. So we work and collaborate with survivors. It's based on our research from victims and survivors of child sexual abuse. We have collected over 25,000 responses globally within 35 languages. We work with parents whose children have been sexually abused, and we analyze child sexual abuse material in a project Arachnid Network, which is led by Canadian Centre for Child Protection. So our small NGO has analyzed 4 million images in the last 5 years. So we know what's there, what is happening right now, especially online. And the Canadian Centre for Child Protection is doing the notice and takedown, because we need to prevent the re-victimization of these children who are now adults, most of them. Based on our learnings, we empower our core work and we produce materials based on what we see and witness. And prevent and protect, this is what Tegan is going to talk today. It's all about our offender-based research and our offender-based intervention and therapeutic kind of models that we have been creating, which are implemented now globally. Redirection. And also, after we started this research, we are also developing redirection youth. Empower and educate. We develop materials based on what we witness, what we hear from the offenders, and what we hear from victims and survivors. We train professionals, we help professionals to how to prevent the re-victimization, and we try to be as loud as possible within our small team. Last but not least, advocate and amplify. So we say in Protect Children, we do research for action. So every statement we put out, every recommendation, we raise the voices of victims, survivors, and their families. So it's not just statements or, writings or blogs. We do that work that matters. Tell me more about tech. It's been a long process, not the easy one. Thanks, team. It's been a little bit bumpy road, but we are here now. I want to start by saying that everyone of our team has been making a huge effort for this research. Everyone. But of course I need to highlight those who gave all their power to make this happen. Some are here, some are unfortunately in Finland because I can't bring everyone here. First of all, I want to say my thank you for fantastic project leader, my right and my left hand, Anna Ovaska, please stand up. Always working behind the scenes. So she's not speaking today because she's working like mad because we had some problems with the links. So hopefully everything is working. That's because we always need these people who work behind the scenes. So and work like mad. So thank you. Then I want to thank our amazing, talented, super person, our head of research, Tegan Insel, whose brain I would like to steal. She will be doing a lot of insights into the research. And then, who is not here unfortunately, but in Finland, listening, hopefully, of course she is. Multi-talented researcher and specialist Valeria Solovava. Even you are not here, please, we truly acknowledge your work and everybody here acknowledge you. And of course I want to thank Ofcom research team. Special thanks to Joe, Priya and Felipa. Good work all together. Last but not least, of course I want to say thank you to our expert advisor who has tried to develop me to lead better. So thank you. It's a really tough work, I know. So thank you so much. And then special thanks for my dear gentle friend in Finland, who I always call like the most wisest man in the world. Thank you, Juha Nurmi, Dr. Juha Nurmi, for being always there for me and for our team. You have been with me since the beginning, always, every step, believing my crazy ideas, believing my crazy inventions. You have always been there. And your wife, Heidi, who is lovely. So my hellos to Heidi as well. Without your belief and trust in me, we would not be here. This world and our work to protect children would not be as powerful as it is now. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Please let's give Juha applause. So today the research findings will give you facts that we cannot ignore. And I'm thrilled that we could not have come out at a more important time in the context of the debate that is raging here in UK, but also around the world. And I feel like we are in the same situation and battle with the smartphones, social media, gaming platforms, adult porn sites, and the harmful early exposure to violent content and child sexual abuse material. We are in the same situation like we were in the 1950s, when the first lawsuit began against the tobacco companies. And please remember, first the companies won. The research pushed and the companies won. It took years before the major legal breakthrough, 1990, and then 1998, to the Master Settlement Agreement, one of the largest settlements in legal history. So we need to keep on fighting. Knowledge is the key for efficient crime prevention. We at Protect Children say, we do research for action. And whoever is a decision maker, they cannot read this report and say, we are doing enough. We are doing enough. No, you're not doing enough. There needs to be some difficult decisions. You will soon hear research finding from Tegan Insel. Our findings need to be taken seriously because we are talking about actually children. We need to be clear, we need to be loud, with our joint message to the tech sector. online safety mechanism that we have now in place is not enough. It's not enough. We need to fix this. It's our responsibility as adults to protect our children. Even how hard it will be for tech companies or the decision makers, our message for you is you have to do more and right now. This situation needs to stop, that we have under 10-year-old children exposed to the violent sexual content and child sexual abuse material. Children cannot wait. I have a grandchild. I don't even let her near anything, what is mobile phones or anything. And the more I work here, this topic, we need to do radical decisions. Ofcom made a clear announcement last week for the big tech companies and requested to improve the approach to trust and safety. I hope our research that we have been doing together helped them shape and frame that directive. And now it's my pleasure to give the floor to our amazing head of research, my dear colleague and a friend, Tegan. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Nina. I'm not sure how to follow such warm words, so I'm going to try and keep my sort of emotional spiel to a minimum and stick, as a researcher, to percentages and statistics. So I hope you can follow along, and I hope it's not too dull. But the findings themselves, I think, speak volumes. So please listen to all of these findings and really think about what they mean for the children that are behind each percentage and each figure. As we know, as we're all aware, child sexual abuse material is a severe and a growing threat to children's rights and safety. And as everyone knows, every year millions and millions of images and videos circulate online. Protecting children from this form of abuse requires a clear and evidence-based understanding of how perpetrators operate in digital environments. This information, although we know we need it, it's not easy to access. How can you ask these kind of questions from people that are doing the worst of the worst crimes? And this is why we felt the need to address this gap. And we've been doing this type of research for many years now, and especially trying to understand the digital motivations and movements of these perpetrators. So we conducted an anonymous survey targeting adults who were actively searching for child sexual abuse material online. We developed the survey in consultation with the experts around the world, some of whom are in this room today, and we thank them very much for their participation. So law enforcement agencies, civil society organizations, academics, policymakers, regulators, all of those people who have all of the information that they need for their work. We wanted to make sure that all of these questions were included in the survey. The survey was distributed through dark web search engines, so that when someone searching for child sexual abuse material online, using a known CSAM keyword, were not displayed any results. They could not access child sexual abuse material. Instead, they were offered an anonymous survey that they could answer, as well as preventive resources, which many, as Almudena said, many did choose to access as well. The sample that we're talking about today are adults who have reported that they have searched for or viewed child sexual abuse material. We also only included those who say that they answered the survey honestly, and only those who were over 18. Unfortunately, many people started answering the survey and said that they were below the age of 18, which shows just the huge extent of this problem. Due to ethics, we didn't want to continue the survey for these individuals who are under 18, but that's something we would like to investigate in the future, seeing as this is such a growing body of people. The sample, even after removing anyone under the age of 18, still consists of primarily very young adult men. 3 in 4 were under the age of 35, and the vast majority, almost half, were under 25. 3/4 were men, others 10% were women. Now the findings. One striking finding that has already been mentioned, but I want to go into more depth, is that many of the respondents were first exposed to both child sexual abuse material and adult pornography at an alarmingly young age. By the age of 10, 13% had already seen child sexual abuse material. By 18, that figure rose to 59%. That's nearly 6 in 10 of these respondents who had seen child sexual abuse material as they were children themselves. And importantly, nearly half of these were unintentional exposure to child sexual abuse material. Only 28% said that when they first saw CSAM, it was after actively searching for it. Nearly half said it was accidental, mostly because someone had sent it to them online or they had stumbled across it online. And this mostly happened on social media platforms. So people are going onto social media platforms and they are stumbling across this material when they were under 18, under 14, under 10 years old. Beyond this early exposure, our findings also found that many began actively searching for child sexual abuse material and adult pornography when they were very young. By the age of 10, 14% had searched for pornography. 12% had searched for CSAM. By the age of 14, 38% had searched for pornography and 31% had searched for child sexual abuse material. By 18, it was well over half of the population that had searched for this content. Both of these findings together underscore the need for the stronger measures to prevent both intentional and, importantly, unintentional exposure to sexual content online, especially among children and adolescents. In terms of the content viewed, and I think these figures are not going to be surprising to many people, the majority, 9 in 10, of the respondents viewed child sexual abuse material that depict girls. 3 in 10 report that they view CSAM depicting boys, and there is an overlap of 20% who view both. But we know from so much research before, from the IWF statistics, that this is an issue that affects girls and women. Another important finding that Almudena also referred to is that respondents are accessing child sexual abuse material across multiple digital platforms. This is not a problem that is limited to the dark web. Of course, many of us understand that, but I think it's still important that we highlight this before we limit our conversations to only preventing something that's happening in the darkest corners of the internet. When asked where they typically search for child sexual abuse material, the figures of dark web platforms versus open web platforms were remarkably similar. 63% typically use dark web, 61% typically use open web platforms. Among the open web environments, it was most frequently on search engines, on pornography sites, and on social media platforms where people try to access child sexual abuse material. We talk about the accessibility of CSAM and the availability of this content, but I think it's interesting to ask the people themselves, the perpetrators, how available they see child sexual abuse material. So we asked this question: how do you think the access to CSAM has changed over time? The responses were very mixed, but give some very interesting insight into how perpetrators themselves view the digital ecosystem and how it facilitates or encourages or prevents their illegal activity. 1/3, encouragingly, did believe that CSAM has become harder to access. They cite site shutdowns, so sites being shut down, stronger moderation on online platforms, law enforcement action being stronger and more widespread, including on the dark web, and also the introduction of paywalls. All of these features together make them say that CSAM has become harder to access. So there is positive insight here. However, nearly half felt that there was no change in the accessibility of CSAM over time. So even though we have stronger regulation, we have stronger awareness among platforms that this is taking place, nearly half of these respondents don't see any change. And even if they do see things happening, overall they think that these changes have had little overall effect. Some people say that sites get shut down, but they pop up fast again. Or it's harder to find, but it doesn't ever stop them from finding the content. Worryingly, nearly 1 in 4 of the respondents think that child sexual abuse material has actually become easier to access over time, particularly due to the availability on social media platforms, which reduce the need to go into the dark web. It reduces the technological barriers. When choosing the platforms where to search for child sexual abuse material, many respondents report that they consistently prioritize privacy and security. I think this is not a surprise, but it's interesting to focus on again. We asked which types of features the respondents tend to avoid when they choose the platforms. And the majority, or the most sort of avoided feature, was strict sign-up procedures and age limits. So platforms where there are age requirements, age verification is in place, these are the platforms that perpetrators avoid. This shows the impact that this can have, not only on preventing access to platforms for young people who shouldn't be on the platforms, but also the perpetrator side as well, that they actually do take steps to avoid. 20% also avoided platforms that lacked anonymity protections, and another 20% avoided platforms that don't have end-to-end encryption. These statistics give a bit of a picture over the behavior, the digital ecosystem that perpetrators access, and what they prioritize online when they are offending. Consistent to this, 3 in 5 respondents reported that they use additional security measures when they're searching for, viewing, sharing, or storing child sexual abuse material. Mostly they used VPNs or the Tor browser, or other methods such as using a separate device or using private or incognito mode. So this is 3 in 5 respondents who are taking extra steps to ensure that they are concealing their activity. But this leaves 2 in 5 who are doing nothing extra other than using all of the protections that are already in place, provided by all of these platforms. And that's enough for them. That's enough to conceal their identity and behavior. Not only this, but nearly half of respondents report actually storing or filing child sexual abuse material, often on their personal devices, on cloud storage services, or actually on external storage devices as well. They are keeping a record of their crimes and offences, and they feel comfortable enough to do that with the protections that they have. Our study also explored the growing role of artificial intelligence in the child sexual abuse material ecosystem. We wanted to see how much this is already permeating the offending space, and to be able to track and follow this over time. As of now, 3 in 10 respondents reported that they view AI-generated CSAM. We believe this figure may be an underestimate, because the respondents themselves, 3 in 5, already admit that they cannot reliably distinguish AI versus real material. And we know from existing research it's becoming harder and harder, and almost impossible in some cases, to distinguish this content. Those who do view AI-generated CSAM describe different forms of content that they view. The majority, 77%, view completely AI-generated CSAM. However, many also report other types. 64% view images that were created by altering photos of real children with AI to create child sexual abuse material. Another 64% view existing CSAM that has been modified with AI to create new images to suit specific preferences or to create more material from existing CSAM. Not only are the respondents viewing AI-generated CSAM, but many are already creating the material themselves. 1 in 10 respondents have created AI CSAM. This is not something that has a high technological barrier. According to the respondents themselves, they learned how to do this through experimentation, through trial and error. They described the process of creating AI-generated child sexual abuse material as simple and straightforward. They used multiple, widely accessible tools that they accessed on open web search engines, and they used image generators that have few meaningful restrictions. They described finding AI generators that don't have safeguards in place, or if they did, they explained how they easily bypassed the existing restrictions. In total, in our data, respondents mentioned 36 different AI services that they have used to create AI-generated CSAM. I think we all know the multitude of risks associated with AI-generated CSAM, but one of the ones that came from the data is that the respondents themselves even talked about the risks associated. They warned that AI-generated CSAM can be a potential gateway that escalates harmful fantasies into real-world behavior. One respondent noted that AI can open the door to increasingly extreme fantasies, as they're able to create and generate any sort of content. These can increase the risk of acting on them. Another respondent described that once the novelty of the AI-generated CSAM wears off, they may even seek out real material or, worryingly, contact abuse. After looking at the role of the digital ecosystem in almost facilitating this abuse, we wanted to also examine how the barriers are in place and how do the respondents feel about the prevention side of the ecosystem. We looked at the role of digital warnings and interventions, as well as sanctions and bans that platforms impose on people that are committing crimes. 1 in 3 of the respondents recalled actually encountering some kind of warning message when they were searching for CSAM. This is quite a small number, 1 in 3 actually recalling. Of course, it may be due to recall issues. They may have encountered warning messages, but they simply don't remember. Or it could be that they're using platforms where warning messages simply do not exist. Mostly they recalled seeing these kind of warning messages on open web search engines and browsers, as well as on dark web search engines, such as the one where the survey was posted. They were sometimes recalled on pornography websites and social media, but much less frequently on messaging services, on AI applications, and on cloud storage services. As we look back at the previous findings, we know that these 3 are places where respondents do use to access, to create, and to store CSAM, but they're not encountering meaningful barriers to these offences. There is some encouraging information here about warning messages. Although a small proportion recall meeting them, those who did, many did say that they actually caused them to reflect on or change their behavior. Some described feeling emotions such as fear, shame, remorse after seeing the messages, and many, 1/3, actually said that the message prompted them to stop searching or to look for help resources. So we see the value of these kind of interventions existing, even if they can just stop one person's behavior, then it's worth it. In terms of platform enforcement, most respondents reported that they had never been banned or sanctioned by an online platform. Only 19% said that they have ever been banned from a platform such as a social media site, although they were slightly more likely to have been banned if they did report using open web platforms to search for a CSAM, especially online gaming platforms. If they reported that they'd used an online gaming platform to access CSAM, the number actually rose to 40% who had been sanctioned or banned. So there is positive signs across different platforms that sanctions and bans are being taken seriously. However, across all the platform types, the majority still reported that they've never been sanctioned or banned. So the behavior that they're quite clearly displaying on these platforms, searching behavior, posting, creating, filing, storing, things that are visible by these platforms are not being encountered or addressed. Broadening out the scope outside of just child sexual abuse material, the study also found that respondents encountered and searched for other illegal and harmful content online. 1/3 reported that they unintentionally saw other harmful material, and 20% said that they had actively searched for it. This is relevant because as we're talking about regulation and the platform enforcement, we mustn't silo the different harms that take place online. Child sexual abuse material exists within the broader space of harmful and illegal content, all of which must be addressed. The type of content that the respondents report viewing include animal cruelty, bestiality, self-harm, and suicide-related material, all of which needs to be addressed with the same level of force. Not only are they encountering and searching for this material online, but many people of the respondents say that they had been promoted harmful content, harmful and sexual content, by online algorithms. 2 in 5 believe that some sort of online algorithm on a platform has promoted some sort of harmful or sexual content to them. This is not necessarily illegal content, but still content that is sexual and includes children. Finally, on a more positive note, this research shows the scale of the problem. It shows the behavioral intentions, and it shows the ecosystem of the digital landscape. But also the study shows that there is power in prevention. The study demonstrates the preventive potential of digital interventions, such as interacting with people at the point of risk, such as when they're searching for child sexual abuse material, and offering some sort of alternative. Even answering the survey prompted reflection. We asked about why they are seeking this material, and many, after answering it, said that they thought about their own behavior for the first time. Especially when we put this back into the context of this age group. This is young men who are exploring online, and they are accessing harmful and illegal content, but some of them have never spoken about this to anyone else. So offering some sort of interaction can potentially cause prevention and change. Furthermore, we offered preventive resources that take a further step, including redirection, Stop It Now, and Help Wanted. And at least on the redirection link, we saw that 2,000 of the 20,000 respondents did actually click through to receive help after they finished the survey. So within all of this, within all of these shocking but unsurprising findings, there is also hope and there is strength in prevention. Thank you so much for listening to the findings. I hope you found them interesting, and please explore the full report as you wish. Thank you. I think we also have some time for a Q&A. So if you have any questions specifically about the research, please feel free to ask them now. If you could speak into the mic so our online participants can hear as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Rihanna Taylor. I'm the Chief Executive of Circles UK, and just thank you. That was really interesting. And even though we work with it every day, I still was moved by a lot of it. I just wanted to ask, did you pick up in your research people operating in groups, chat rooms, comms rooms? Because it was sort of, we often think of these lone people sitting alone in dark rooms doing funny things, but have you any group context?
We didn't actually focus on that very much in this research. I think there's small indications potentially in some of the open responses, but it's not something that we focused on, but is definitely something for future research. Yeah. Do you want to speak?
No, they were also kind of, we added, in the end of the survey, we asked some volunteer questions about the demographics. So it's a small number of people who kind of responded about their education, about the location, about like their employment status. So it didn't really reflect of lonely, you know, unemployed person in the cellar, like we like to think. So it was quite a lot of students, quite a lot of people who had education, and I cannot, you know, remember everything out loud. But I think there are some interesting results which are a little bit like breaking the stereotypic picture we have from the offenders. And I think if you look like the age of the respondents, we are talking about young males, students, and you know, with the academic background as well. So I think that we really need to stop and try to think what we can do to prevent the escalation.
You said you put this survey up on one. You said you put this survey up on one dark web search engine. How did you get it up? And the other point is, it seems to me, however sort of secure they might think the answers were, the fact that these offenders seem to be willing to answer. I mean, if you put a survey up asking how many people were burglars, I don't suppose you'd get much of a response. So seriously, it shows how these people aren't in fear of being caught.
Absolutely. I think you've hit on something there, that this perception of the online space as something somewhere so secure that they can even answer with such honesty as many of the respondents have, I think shows just how secure they feel. But I can speak to a bit more of the methodology of how we launched this survey. So as Nina mentioned, our good colleague, Dr. Juha Nurmi, actually runs one of the world's largest dark web search engines. It's called Ahmia. It's a Finnish search engine that operates on the dark web. And he is committed to preventing access to child sexual abuse material on this search engine. So for the past 6 years, we've been working together with him to intercept all searches for child sexual abuse material and make sure that people trying to use his search engine to access this content cannot, and instead they are offered alternatives like a survey like this, as well as always preventive resources. Thank you.
How would you like this research to be used? Sorry, how would you like this research to be used, especially educating younger people, educating parents? How would you like to see it distributed?
Absolutely, great question. I mean, I think there's so many findings in this research. It was a comprehensive survey. There's a lot of topics covered. I mean, I bounced from so many topics here. There's so many places that each of these findings can be used. I think the panel will speak much more coherently to how we want the research to be used in practice. But for me, I think all of these findings are very important for the policy side, for the broader changes that need to take place, recognizing the harms that are taking place online, and recognizing that still more and more needs to be done.
Yeah, and I would like to add, like, there are some things that are quite easily to be fixed. Like, for example, if you're looking for illegal violent adult porn or whatever you are looking for, I mean, the deterrence message should come like 100% to everyone who is trying to find illegal, harmful content. And again, like, let's keep our children off from sites that are not developed for them. Let's make sure that there are age verification for making sure that children are not accessed, for example, adult porn sites. It's not healthy for children to access that kind of content. So there are quite many things that we can do in an easy way. And of course, this is a social problem. We can't fix this with the technology, but the technology companies need to fix what they can. And there's so much more they can do.
Hi, Deborah Dennis, Chief Exec, Lucy Faithfull Foundation. My question follows on from that a little bit around deterrence messaging. And I think the research really shows the importance of putting that friction in place. Can you say a little bit more about the importance of the frequency of messaging, so the repeated exposure effect, and what you learned from the research about how important that actually is?
Absolutely. And actually, to talk about this in the future as well, we are working on future research that digs into this in a much more granular level. So stay tuned for that as well, because we do investigate things about repeated exposure to deterrence messages and asking the same group of respondents whether that improves or makes it like less effective for the deterrence messaging. But from this research, we do see that, of course, there's such a wide range of responses to deterrence messages. There are many that just simply ignore them. There are many that are very angry about them being there, which is also not such a bad thing. But there are so many that do say that it prompts them to reflect on their behavior, and that seeing it multiple times reinforces that feeling. If they start feeling after the first time that they see a message that says that this is illegal, this is harmful, and you shouldn't be doing this, it prompts that feeling. And over time, seeing that message again and again, especially if that message potentially keeps changing and shifting, it shows, firstly, that the ecosystem is not a place where they can access child sexual abuse material, so it prevents the access, but also reinforcing those sort of internal cognitive feelings as well. Good question, thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Tegan. I had a question about the deterrence messaging as well, actually, just to build on what Deborah was asking. Did any of the responses give you some thoughts about how kind of early signposting and deterrence messaging can be improved? Like some of the responses, particularly around that idea of kind of moral neutrality when it's, just viewing, and perhaps a lack of understanding from some of the respondents on the harm viewing material actually represents.
Yeah, I think a lot of those quotes do highlight that. Maybe something that is lacking in the deterrence messaging space is recognizing such a scale of, from that first moment of searching for child sexual abuse material, potentially out of curiosity, potentially when they're, under 18, under 14, but meeting a message that is quite disjointed to the action that they're actually taking. If something that is saying that it's illegal and they're going to be prosecuted straight away, it might be causing more of those anger or sort of confusion responses. So a key takeaway from that is the need for deterrence messaging to also take into account the different spaces at which a user might be coming to this.
Perhaps, I think, because they do demonstrate, don't they, a lack of understanding about why it's harmful, which is obviously something you see in offenders in court quite a lot. So, perhaps something around actually explaining why just viewing is harmful.
Absolutely.
And I need to jump in and say, thank you, UK Home Office, for the next funding and the next research report, because Tegan is so not saying it, so I will say it because she's so brilliant that we have got the funding, so we will publish the world's biggest deterrence message research findings in April, May, which is also Tegan and some colleagues here in the room. So thank you, Home Office, for this absolutely fantastic funding for that. So thank you.
Was there any direct link between online offending and actually offending in person? What turned up?
This is something that we've investigated previously, and we've done a lot of research to try and understand that link, especially because there is such mixed opinion and belief around this, which I think is quite damaging. So previously in our research, we've done a very similar survey where we found that around 40% of those who are searching for CSAM do go on to contact a child in some way. We investigated the certain risk factors that also increased the risk of this, and we can have a look at that in some of our previous research. Yeah.
Second question, the AI-generated CSAM, how difficult is it getting for the investigators of CSAM to say whether it's an actual live case and AI, and how can we better protect children because of that? Because if you can't distinguish, how can we rescue children?
Absolutely. I think that's something that maybe Danny can speak to later in the panel from a law enforcement perspective to get them more detail there. Thank you.
So obviously the report talks about early exposure to pornography and CSAM as pathways. Did you ask as part of the research whether or not, or what types of pornographic content that offenders are still viewing alongside CSAM?
We didn't ask that, no. We had so many things that we wanted to fit into the survey, so we had to limit a few things, but that would be incredibly interesting. Yeah.
Hi there, Chloe from Google. Thank you so much for the research and the report. I was interested in the sort of comorbidity with some of the other kind of harms that the perpetrators were looking for or viewing. And it kind of, one of the quotes stood out about the sort of my morbid curiosity. And I wondered, like, I don't know that the survey looked at this, but like more broadly, this sort of the intention behind some of the abuse. Like, is it purely driven by sexual motivation, or is it more around like seeking out more and more extreme kind of content, and kind of, yeah, existing in this kind of world where they just kind of seeing all the worst stuff, and testing that all the time. So I just wondered your thoughts on that, please.
Yeah, I think you've exactly highlighted that is one of the key pathways that we're seeing, is that it's not purely driven necessarily by sexual interest in children, but also this early exposure to pornography and the more and more extreme pornography and content that is available online might lead young people to continue to search and continue to escalate the material that they're searching for. And I do think that morbid curiosity quote really speaks to that point, and especially shows the need for the barriers in place to prevent these harms from happening by people that don't even necessarily have that underlying motivation.
Yeah, Dexter here from Deaf Kids International. So it's more of an observation more than anything, but it boggles my mind that 40% of the respondents are saying that they are seeing, getting algorithmic feeds of content that, you know, they shouldn't be seeing. And it speaks a lot to what other people said about the pathways, people's pathways to it. The fact that so many younger kids are exposed, and you know, the data's in there, of course, about how they're exposed to stuff they're not even looking for, but it's the first time they view pornography, you know, under the age of 18. And the figures are, you know, it's clearly, as you said, a funnel towards the behavior, like a major funnel towards this kind of behavior. It's interesting that we have Google in the room. I feel like that is, algorithms are such, there's still so much work to be done. I mean, we do, you know, AI is a huge, you know, kind of emerging threat as well, but just like the algorithms and the optimizing for engagement, that is still responsible for funneling people towards this kind of behavior and escalating, you know, their morbid curiosity, even if it's just that, if it's not anything else, there's still much responsibility which lays on them. And it just blew my mind, actually, just seeing that, you know, 40%. Reporting that is crazy, and that's to say nothing, of course. You know, these are people over the age of 18. You know, 10,000 responses were people under the age of 18, which obviously can't form part of the report. But I would be really interested to see their stats for that statistic as well, that algorithmic exposure. Yeah. Anyway, it's just a comment. But yeah, thanks for doing this research. It's incredibly important.
Thank you, and thanks for a very good comment. And I think just an extra point here about those algorithmic recommendations is also from the prevention side, from people that do want to actually start changing their behavior. Potentially they have been searching for child sexual abuse material, they have been committing crimes online, but maybe at that point when they start to want to change their behavior, maybe they found a prevention resource and they do start to try and take control, but still the algorithm will continue feeding them the content that they're interested in. And the damage that has on that potential, that it's so close that they could start to prevent and change their behavior, but the algorithms might continue to reinforce it.
Hi, Sharon Ward, I'm Serious Violence Duty Coordinator in Cambridgeshire. Thank you so much for sharing the research today. I'm really interested in all the research, obviously, but particularly the under 18s. And when you think about that and what we know about the COM network and that those perpetrators within that network are more likely to be under 18, that's really significant. And I suppose the overarching bit for me is around the real need for this to be seen as a public health-based problem and challenge. And that's for everybody. So that's, you know, absolutely the tech companies need to take responsibility, but actually that support for parents, for children, and actually those conversations taking place early. Your research talks about under 10s, and actually we need to be equipping and empowering parents to actually be able to have the conversations with their kids alongside the tech companies taking responsibility too. So I think there's that real public health-based need and recognition that online harm is more harmful in some cases than in-person harm.
Absolutely, and I think that answers Chris's question earlier about the sort of the need for this research and what that should mean for parents and for children much better than I answered. So thank you. And Nina, did you want to add something?
Yeah. As we have the floor, so the next research we are doing with the IPRI will be published in June, where we really focus on the victims and survivors of child sexual abuse, and we compare the negative consequences from online and tech-facilitated crimes versus contact crimes. And unfortunately, that research, we know a little bit about the results. It's gonna kind of show how the online environment and when the images are taken from the victims are more severe and long-term consequences. So that is also coming at the IPRI conference in June. The date is 8th to the 10th, and that's a really good conference.
Tegan, well done to you and the team. I have a comment that feeds into a question. So I find it some frustrating irony in the algorithmic perspective that we were sharing because of the type of content that you keep getting exposed to, but also we've all been exposed to algorithms that are pushing, selling, targeted advertisements at us. So in fact, the platforms could be taking a similar approach to push prevention services in the same way. If you have been exposed to some materials, potentially not even CSAM, but any harmful or violent materials that you're actively searching for. So I think they can take more responsibility clearly in that area. And I was curious if you've had any initial input from any of the platforms following the research that you've conducted.
Thank you for your comment, and I think that it's great also to be thinking about the ways that we can harness the technology that is existing and expanding instead of just trying to prevent technological innovation. That's obviously not what we want to do, but try and use it to the benefit as well. About the platforms, I think it's potentially a question that will be covered in the panel a bit more, and also in discussion with Ofcom about the actions and the steps that have been taken. Thanks. Super. Thank you so much. If we don't have any more questions, thank you so much.
Tegan, that was an absolute tour de force. Congratulations. Not only on the research, but the way you've presented it, the way you've taken the questions. It's really, really very, very impressive. Right, we'll now move on to our panel. Dan Sexton, who's at the very end, who's the Chief Technical Officer at the Internet Watch Foundation. Danny Van Heusen, who Danny and I have worked together now for a very, very long time, heads the Crimes Against Children group at Europol in The Hague. And Michael Tunks, obviously from Ofcom, formerly of the Internet Watch Foundation. And then obviously Nina. So Chris, I will, before I go into the questions, we will just answer your question in terms of the ability of law enforcement and the Internet Watch Foundation. I think it's equally important to be able to identify artificially created child sexual abuse material versus the stuff that is clearly fake. Danny, how feasible is it now to be able to say with great confidence that is generative CSAM?
It's a very short answer. Unfortunately, it's not. So the quality is so good that it's almost impossible to say if something is artificial generated or not.
And Dan, I know you'd say exactly the same thing.
It was, I remember 2 years ago being asked the question, how do you know when it will become indistinguishable from real?
Yep.
Like, it's indistinguishable from real. You won't and you can't. So I don't know when it happened. When maybe it happened on yesterday or maybe it happened a year ago, but indistinguishable is the case. You cannot, and that's not just child sexual abuse, but really anything digital online. When we did some work looking at tools that could detect if content was generated or not in our own data sets, the only way that we could be sure in our data, we were testing, we could actually divide into real and fake, was to divide it by anything we'd received before 2023. Because anything after that date, we didn't know. So that's it. And now, unless you can be sure it was created before, effectively, the modern generators were created, after that, everything is a question mark.
And I don't want to be overly graphic because I don't think it's necessary, but I think it's really important that when we're talking about child sexual abuse material, we are talking about the worst imaginable sexual abuse. It's not, in so many cases, the image of a child who's naked in a bathroom or a bedroom, and I want to make that very clear. And I also want to make it very, very clear that AI tools are now affording offenders the ability to pretty much do whatever they want with a body image or images of children. And again, we shouldn't duck this issue. We shouldn't duck the issue, the fact that there are now paedophile manuals that are available that will tell you how to abuse a child whom is only a day, 2, 3, 4 days old without then getting caught. So that gives you some idea of the challenges that we are facing, and whilst we haven't specifically referred to that today, I think it's really important that there is no doubt in the room about the challenges that we face and what is actually taking place with the creation of child sexual abuse material, with the creation of generative CSAM, and the ability to change text to images is now so very, very good. It will only be, if it's not already feasible, for people to start creating generative child sexual abuse films. And if it's not already here, it will be here imminently, and you will not be able to tell the difference. The technology is moving that quickly. Danny?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, the films are here already.
Yeah.
So we've seen it already on the dark web. And I think it's very important to see that we are talking about AI-generated child sexual abuse material or AI-generated material in general. But if you talk about AI-generated CSAM, everything that is done to make it looks like indistinguishable CSAM has to do with the fact that the models or the fine-tuning models that they use to create it are trained on actual child sexual abuse material. So the fact that it's AI generated has nothing to do with the fact that there is no real victim. Maybe the child that is depicted in the media file isn't a real existing child, but it is trained on real children. And if there is a sexual act or genitalia in the picture, that is trained on actual genitalia or actual children. So I think that's very important to highlight. So the AI-generated discussion makes it also, it's not real children. But the fact that it is there is only there because the models are trained on real children. I think that's very important to highlight as well.
Nina?
I think for the prevention, it's really important now to understand, not just keep on telling like how the statistics of the AI-generated images are growing, but from our research, if 40% of those who are looking for child sexual abuse material are contacting a child after viewing this content, so I think that's the critical point, because we can't now anymore separate what is the AI, and I have been analyzing child sexual abuse material for 11 years, so I can't anymore say is it real or is it not like real image. So that is the most concerning. So if the numbers go up, as the IWF has said, that means that there are more and more images And if 40% of offenders are contacting a child when they have seen the material, that's the most concerning if I kind of, on my personal perspective.
Thanks, Nina. So can I now move on to Mike? You are, from an Ofcom perspective, you are now having to try to keep pace with the development of technology and law keeping pace with it. So in terms of how is generative CSAM caught in the scope of the Online Safety Act? What are the gaps and what should services be doing?
Yeah, so the first thing I'd say is that we don't distinguish, the law in the UK doesn't distinguish between AI-generated CSAM or any other form of CSAM. So if it, long story short, if it's under UK law, it's under Schedule 6 of the Online Safety Act, then services are, supposed to be preventing and removing that content as soon as it becomes available. The challenge is obviously that the Online Safety Act was 7 years in the making. Generative AI wasn't something that we were talking about during the passage of the Act coming through in Parliament. And the long story short is that we have had to publish guidance because, there are 100,000 services within scope of the OSA, whether they're user-to-user or search-based. And there are some subtle differences with how generative AI is caught. So the long story short is that if a generative AI tool enables users to interact with each other, exchange messages, images, etc., they're caught within scope of the Act. If an AI-generated chatbot enables you to interact with another user through that, that is also caught within the scope of the Act. But as you say, Simon, there are some gaps with where that's at, and we've openly written to AI services to explain how they're caught within the Act. But we've also highlighted where some of these chatbots, for example, are out of scope of the Act. And this is where they only allow one person to interact with that chatbot, where they do not search multiple websites and databases and generating results for users, and where they cannot generate pornographic content. But we've also looked at the harms that can be done through generative AI as well, and we've produced research papers on what services can also be doing now, to the second part of your question. We've produced red teaming papers, so obviously at the moment red teaming for CSEA is illegal, but there are amendments coming down the line in the Crime and Policing Bill that will enable services to do that. And we've established a 10-point plan for how services should red team for generative AI. There's other things they can be doing by exploring watermarking, provenance, metadata, and labelling, for example. But we've looked at this more holistically. We've looked at this across a range of harms, what the implications are for deepfakes as well as CSEA. Clearly, there's more work to be done. We're working on ensuring that the codes that we have are enforceable with the services that we have. But other measures that we're bringing forward, which we're finalising at the moment around proactive technology, are really important because hashing only catches known images at the moment. Clearly, this is a new emerging harm. It will take time for those images to come onto a hash list. So proactive technology to detect CSEA, new forms of CSEA, is something that we're proposing and finalising at the moment, and that's something that we can then hold services to account.
Thank you. So just in terms of trying to get some balance into the conversation, Dan, do you see AI for good being used in this space? And if you can see AI for good being used, what would that look like?
So yes, I mean, particularly generative AI, and this is a bit of a known issue, which it is, it's not very reliable, it's not very specific, it gets stuff wrong. And that means that actually it's much harder to use it for good because you really care about it getting it wrong if you're using it for a good purpose, because you don't have that tolerance. But bad uses, they don't care, right? So you're trying to create child sexual abuse, and 30% of the time it doesn't do it very well. Who cares, right? There's no input there. So increasing this very new technology that's quite untested is adopted quickly by bad actors, whether it's child sexual abuse, malware creators, disinformation, because the tolerance for it not being correct is such lower. Those that want to use it for good in our work or in law enforcement work, we have to be, it has to be right, it has to work well. So it's harder, and we're at a disadvantage there. However, there have been, and this is sort of pre-generative AI, good old-fashioned AI, there has always been a really good, and accurate forms of detection for new types of content. The question there is where you put it to have the most effect. Yes, it's useful as part of content moderation. We definitely advise that in your sort of content moderation stack. I would say the place where I have hope of being the most effective is on child devices. So and that doesn't combat all harms, but certainly if you're trying to reduce the chance of a child viewing, sending, receiving, and creating sexual imagery of themselves, having something on that device, and if it doesn't get it right all the time, that's okay, because it causes a bit of friction, a bit of inconvenience, but it's worth it in that case. That, I think, is a really powerful use. It doesn't stop offender-to-offender interactions. It's not going to stop a lot of the stuff we're seeing here, but that could be a really powerful way of actually helping children themselves, if they are being groomed or coerced, whether it's by classmates or extortionists, or both making it harder for them to create that content, and also crucially making it easier for them to say, no, I can't send you an image because my phone won't let me. So I think that's a really, really powerful part, and I'm really, really hopeful we'll see that technology more widely available.
Nina, then John.
Yeah, I just want to say, of course, AI for Good, our research has been done in so many languages. So we have 100,000 responses from offenders within 31 languages. So AI for Good is that no researcher can do all the languages and open-ended answers that we have right now. So that is what the AI can do good, help the research to find out what the different language-speaking offenders are saying.
So, Dan, it's very good to hear what you just said about child-on-child abuse and detecting on devices, because there is technology now obviously available to do that. I understand the government may bring forward legislation about this in the near term, but why don't they bring forward legislation to block this stuff out for everybody, so that the people who are watching it as adults can't see it, and then they can't see live streaming, rather than the online Ofcom trying to take this stuff down after it's been seen, so it's been up for, and we know there are millions of this stuff still there. And I know that there is an issue as to detecting whether a 15, 16, 17-year-old is that age or over 18. But given that certainly in the Philippines, half the children being abused on live streaming are 12 or under, why not start at, say, an age gate of 13 or 14 and apply it to all devices sold in the UK?
So the honest answer to that question of why not do it everywhere, and this is coming back to IWF, 30 years we've been doing in our work. For 20 years we were doing internet-based blocking, censorship. We were blocking what people could see on the internet. And what our experience there was, you get it right 1 million times, no one cares. You get it wrong once, and suddenly everything gets dismantled, the whole organisation, you get absolute. And we've seen it where we got it wrong once and it looked like the entire thing would be stopped. And that's the concern about doing everywhere. It's not every time that you've protected the children, it's the one time that you inconvenience somebody, it incorrectly blocks an image. Just the backlash there we've seen that. So my advice is to focus initially at least on child devices. Is the potential for backlash and inconvenience and getting it wrong is so much less. So if a child sends an image and it gets blocked and it's not actually CSAM, it's actually a picture of an octopus, well, that's okay. That's unfortunately, you just accept that and that's okay. But if that's on that's on the internet and that's a member of the public, they'll be writing to their MP demanding that that's censorship and needs to be disabled. So, we start with where it works best. That gives us an opportunity to have positive impact. And then that opens up the possibility of making it work in other places. And what the worst case is, so the internet blocking system we have in the UK, they tried to roll out in Australia at the same time, and it got pushed back because of censorship, and so it doesn't exist there. And that's 20 years, and it's not come back. So getting it right, so it just feels like the pressure on us to get everything right all of the time is so high. We get it wrong a couple of times, and the whole thing gets thrown out. And that's my main reason for why.
Yeah, I was just going to come in on that one.
Said to me the other day when I said, it that the false positives are now, certainly under 13, well below 1%.
John, sorry.
You'll have to wait.
John, sorry, just so everybody can hear.
When I told Jess Phillips the other day that the false positives for, say, under 13 are now way below 1%, and she said, I didn't care about false positives. Now, she may, but isn't it a price worth paying if your child's picture gets taken down by mistake when people know what's going on?
Yeah, no, I was just going to make a similar point, Lord Nash. That doesn't sound like a technical reason not to do it. It sounds like a lack of political will. And so I think a better answer, if I may be so forward, is to say, yes, absolutely, it's technically possible. It just needs political leadership. Because there's lots of campaigners out there who, quite frankly, we could get millions of parents to march on Parliament to say we don't care if a picture in a medieval painting gets blocked. We care about our children. So I just wouldn't want any regulator or any company in this room or online to think that that's a good enough reason not to act, because I can certainly provide the air cover if that's what's needed. But in terms of my question, just wondering if the panel could comment on this. It maybe based on other research and the research that very interesting research out today. Is the theory that fewer children may be abused for the purposes of online enjoyment because AI will be trained on what already exists and be used, but because of its ubiquity, that more children will be sexually abused in real life because we know the 40% figure? I'm trying to think strategically and ahead. What does this mean about where this is going? Thank you.
Who would like to answer that question? Danny.
Well, a clear answer is difficult, because we don't know. The only thing that we do know is with the possibility to have your fantasy put on a screen by generation, AI generation, we see severity increase. We see severity increase over the past years. If you look at child sexual abuse material, it's getting more and more severe. So if there is a percentage that shifts from watching material, exchanging material, to abusing children, and their threshold has increased because of the deterioration of the material that he watched over the time, then the abuse that takes place will be more severe. I think that is something that you can say. Will it be lower or higher? That is difficult to say. I think the percentages speak for themselves, and we know that severity increases. AI gives you limitless fantasy, where we had green screen in the past, which is always difficult, especially if you are an amateur videographer. But now with AI, the quality is perfect.
I'm not aware of any research which has mentioned any sort of displacement of demand for imagery of real children in place of AI. And actually, everything is pointing to the opposite of if somebody uses an AI generator feeling like it doesn't hurt children, is that a pathway to real? So I think it will. I'm not aware of any sort of research or anything that suggests that AI-generated imagery of children is in any way going to help or reduce demand for sexual imagery. If anything, I expect it will be worse. And again, as Danny said, looking at things like severity and all those sorts of stuff is people are looking for worse and worse content. I think that's going to make things worse, not better.
Jo.
Yes, thank you. And thank you very much, Nina, as well, for the report and for Protect Children. I think for me, it's absolutely blown out of the water our preconceptions nowadays of what we're looking at as sex offenders. They are not the old men in the dirty old raincoats like we used to think. And I suppose two things for me, really. One is absolutely about what Lord Nash has already referred to, this misrepresentation that online abuse and exploitation is teenagers. And we have that idea, we see quite clearly from your research here, 40%, near enough 40% are under 10. And one of the things that I struggle with, both in my capacity as Chief Executive of Embrace Child Victims of Crime, but also within safeguarding work that I work in, is this lack of narrative. And I'm still hearing from our statutory safeguarding partners it wasn't so bad, it was just online. And I can understand how parents might justify that to themselves as a coping mechanism. But whilst we are absolutely targeting through Parliament tech companies, we also need to be looking at our statutory services, because I believe that we're failing significant numbers of children by not recognising the effect that online harm has. And I think this is a starter for that, absolutely. And I wait with bated breath for IPRI, because there's a lot of work to do within our safeguarding partners as well. We just are not getting this right.
Thanks, Jo. Nina, do you want to pick up on that, or do you want me to move on?
Move on.
Okay, right. So
The research is coming. Let's
Yes.
move on.
Okay. So next question, and Mike, I'll come to you first on this, please. The report highlights just how damaging early exposure to pornography and CSAM can be, with 65% of respondents being exposed to porn before the age of 18 and 59% being exposed to CSAM. What more needs to be done to better protect children from content that is harmful to them, such as pornography, and how can the public be better protected from stumbling across CSAM?
Thanks, Simon. I think I was listening to that. This is a really interesting debate that's been going on in the front row here with Dan and Danny, because I think it's really, I think the urge to want to reach a solution for something is obviously there, given the harm that there is. But I think the reality is that there's never going to be one single silver bullet, right, that solves all of this problem. So I think it's about making sure that we're intervening early. Obviously, some of the powers that we have handed down to us through the Online Safety Act, for example, the implementation of highly effective age assurance to ensure that children aren't accessing pornography. So we now have the top 100 porn websites implementing highly effective age assurance for users coming from the UK. That's a huge step forward. We've opened 80 investigations into services that aren't compliant in that area as well. Of course, there's still challenges there, you know, but there is a step forward and there has been progress. So I think it's about, number one, limiting harmful exposure. Number two is then taking out CSEA in the places where we know offenders are accessing it. So this report does actually tell us even more than we already knew about where the harm is occurring. For us, that's focused so far on file sharing and pornography websites. We're looking at extending our hash matching measure, and we're hoping to confirm that soon to make sure that known CSAM isn't circulating kind of in those areas. Deterrence messaging is also really important. Again, the report highlights that. I think that there has been some progress made. I mean, the figures in the report itself are mixed, okay? We acknowledge that. 33% say it's getting harder, 43% say there's no overall change. But the fact that 33% have said that this is getting harder is something that I think we should hold on to, amongst the fact that there are a number of negatives in this report about how the harm is changing and getting worse. There are some shoots of some progress being made. It's our role as the regulator to hold services to account, and where they don't meet that threshold, then of course we won't hesitate to use the full powers that are available under the Online Safety Act, whether that's business disruption measures or fines. But you know, where we have opened enforcement investigations, we are beginning to see progress.
Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of a chair's gift here, in that I think we've probably got time for one more question, and I'd like all the panel to contribute to this one. There's been a lot of conversation internationally about how to deal with child sexual abuse and exploitation and other harms created by social media. Some countries have acted already, in the case of Australia, to bring in a ban, and others, including the UK, Spain, France, to name a few in Europe, are considering implementing a ban for under-16s. And I think the Greeks have announced today that they are going to bring in legislation imminently to ban social media for children under the age of 15. What are the views on the panel in light of this report about the benefits and drawbacks of any potential ban, and would it have an impact on the problems set out in this report? And what I'll do is I'll start with Dan and we'll work this way. So you've all got a little bit of time to think. Dan, except you. but we've discussed this.
So we haven't, it's not, there are two findings from this report which I think are really important. Really, firstly, that age. So it's something like 65%, including the ones that didn't respond, under the age of 25. So that would have been people who have been born this century. So look at that timeline. Facebook was released in 2004. first Apple iPhone released 2007. This is the first generation of people who would have had a smartphone as a child. So even the oldest in that group would have been 7 years old. 10, so by the time they're 10, they could have had a smartphone in their hand, and they could have had access to what is now the biggest social media site from one of the richest men in the world. I don't know what the correlation is. I know it's not the correlation, but I think it's telling that 65% of the respondents looking for CSAM are that smartphone generation. So the first point. And the second point was on the power of age verification, not just for children. So there's minimum ages. And looking at these respondents and saying they won't use a service because there's age verification, not necessarily because they're children, probably not actually because everyone's over 18, they're not because they're children, because this feeling that perhaps it's impinging a little bit on their anonymity. It's posing a bit of risk, and therefore they're not using it. So those two things, just having a minimum age is enough for offenders to not use a service at all. So you're not just protecting children from content, but you're also actually pushing away. So these are sort of consequential positive effects of regulation on the internet. It's been 25 years of unregulation, of no regulation. Seeing it come in, and seeing what Ofcom has started doing, seeing what eSafety are doing and others around the world, it gives us hope that actually just something like a minimum age can have that big an effect on the entire ecosystem. It does inconvenience some people, and that's where that pushback is coming back. But just highlighting here that the services, offenders not using a service because age verification on there, that is the reason why we're doing it, and that's how you start disrupting this and pushing this back into the niches and away from the mainstream.
Thank you. Danny.
I think it's good to think about a age restriction to use social media, whether that would be 16 or 14, that is a debate. I think it's also important to see that, especially highlighting what you were saying, our children know exactly how it works. You see a huge increase in VPN services in Australia after it was announced, so that there is ways to use social media anyway. So I think age verification is very, very positive. But I also want to highlight one of the things, and that is the start of this presentation of the report, and also the possibilities that you can reach not only perpetrators, but also children. So if you would ban it, there will be a age time. So if it would be 16, the day that somebody is 16 and one day, he or she will start using the phone. And then we miss a part of education, we miss a part of early warning, we miss a part of maybe identifying and divert in another direction. So I think the discussion should be, yes, as of a certain age, but don't forget to do what this study has proven, that it is valuable to be there online and to interact.
Pike.
Yeah, unsurprisingly, I mean, from our perspective, we're looking clearly whether to introduce a ban is a matter for the government, and we'll work closely with them on understanding, what the evidence kind of tells us around some of that. So I guess from us, it's a wait and see on the effectiveness of this. We're obviously an evidence-based regulator and really interested in what the evidence is going to tell us. But just to some of the points that Danny and Dan have made. Obviously, in the last week, we've written to some of the largest social media platforms, including Instagram, Facebook, Snap, Roblox, YouTube. And it's about the things that we've been discussing today. It's been about enforcing their minimum age. It's been about enforcing strong grooming protections and the recommender systems that were mentioned earlier in the room as well, and doing better and more there. So they have until the 30th of April to respond to us, and we're looking forward to hearing about what we'll get back. But yeah, let's wait and see.
Nina.
We have been trying to make tech companies to work to protect children on voluntary basis. 2 years ago, like we started this event, we made the recommendation for the tech companies. Were there something done? Not much. So I think we need to teach children to use online digital tools, online education materials and everything, but do we need to give them their own smartphone early? No, we don't. And what Finnish National Health and Welfare Institute has now kind of gave a recommendation that actually no under 13-year-old child should have a smartphone. That's a Finnish kind of quite bold statements and recommendations now. We have banned smartphones from schools, and there's been a very healthy kind of change in schools in Finland. The teachers have been saying like they are more like lifting their heads up, so kind of and discussing with each other. So I think that, like I started to say, tobacco companies were pushing people to smoke cigarettes, and then now you can buy cigarettes, but you need to be plus 18 to get them. So I think the regulation is coming. It's just when, and we will lose children, quite many, if we just wait and wait. And the ban shouldn't be a political win. It should be a joint people come together and protect children.
Thank you very much. Right. I think that's probably drawn to an end the panel conversations. Can I just thank all the panel members? Thank you so much for your contribution, your insights, to bringing to this this session the insights that you've got over many, many years and the challenges that you face on a daily basis, dealing with challenges that are quite clearly getting harder by the year. I don't think there can be any dispute about that. And thank you also for the questions that have come from the floor. I think it's added some more to the list that I had, and it's been insightful and it's been helpful. Nina, you asked to have the penultimate word, so the floor is yours.
Kind of feeling like there's kind of a little bit emptiness in my head after this full final push out for the report. I just want to highlight that we cannot look away from the research results we have now published. Well, people have been able to look away from the To Know research results that we published at the EU Parliament. People were able to look away when we published about how the social media platforms are used by offenders. So maybe there is a possibility to people to look away, but I don't want to believe that, and my team will work like mad that this report goes out and there will be actions based on our research. And we need joint actions, we need collaboration, and at the same time, like Tegan said, there are positive movements and towards kind of preventing these crimes. And again, I need to highlight, like Home Office have now funded, based on this research results, that we develop a program for redirection youth, which is those first curious males who are looking for, through the dark web and other platforms, illegal content, that they would not get the content they will get. Redirection Youth program, it will be published in June. Redirection program is now undergoing randomized control trial with the Johns Hopkins University. We have actually huge numbers of people who are also coming to get like support to end. And we all know how addictive the smartphones are. Everybody knows that. How hard it is to try not to look what your phone is saying to you. So I have been working in this field so long. This is my kind of message to you. People say that we cannot take phones away from children, or we just cannot put the age limits or even ban the social media from kids. We just need to train them, educate them to, be more efficient of not using it too much. How many of you are using your smartphones in a way that is very healthy? Anyone wants to lift a hand? So I think this is the point. Regulation and new legislation needs to come, but also kind of we need actions and talk, not talk, actions. Thank you.
Nina, thank you very much indeed. I will wrap this up fairly quickly. 3 observations. I don't think any of us should ever underestimate the power of a small organisation being led by some hugely dynamic women can bring about fundamental change in the way that you've brought about change. And look, I can't help but think, and Mike, I'm not asking for a comment, but I cannot help but think that the announcement last week by Ofcom in terms of writing to those tech companies to say you have to do more is connected to your findings, connected to your research, because it clearly highlights that more has to be done. And I don't think there can be any dispute or any doubt about that fact. The tech companies, it's not a silver bullet, but more needs to be done. So look, you deserve as a team a huge amount of credit for your research, for your innovation. Juha, it's a great shame you can't be here, we understand why, but you deserve a huge amount of credit for shining a light on the challenges that we face to bring about the change that we all agree is necessary. So look, huge congratulations to you and your team. It's pretty amazing what you are doing. One of the questions that was asked by the audience, what would you like this report to do? What would you like to see the outcome to be? I would love politicians around the world to be listening to this 2-hour session, to be reading the report, and then to look themselves in the mirror and say, how can we not do something about this? I'm not sure how many reports have to be published. I'm not sure how many horrible newspaper headlines have to be created before we realise that something has to be done. And it's not just about a ban, it's around really good legislation. It's a really good, effective implementation of that legislation and holding people to account. It's around education and awareness, because I really fear that there are a generation of parents who simply do not understand what their children are being exposed to and the risks that their children are facing every single day. And we have to move away from this notion, I need my child to have a smartphone so I can track them, so I know where they are. They are more at risk in their bedroom with a smart device, where mum and dad think they are absolutely fine, than they are mum and dad tracking them as they jump on the school bus and jump off. So I think we have to do some myth busting. And then finally, I just want to say something on behalf of victim survivors and the parents of victim survivors, because too often they don't have a voice in this, and too often we talk about the most frightening numbers, and those numbers trip off the tip of my tongue and they get lost. So just imagine being that woman walking down the street who is stared at by a man for a little bit longer than is normal, who then thinks, have you seen the images of me being raped? I cannot imagine what that can be like. But there are tens of thousands of women that are out there now that are having to deal with that. Don't tell me we shouldn't be doing something more to try and stop it. And then go and speak to some parents who are asked to come to a school to be met by their 11-year-old daughter who is absolutely distraught. She's having hysterics. To be told by the school, your daughter's been sending indecent images. That little girl was 11 years of age. She had been groomed, she had been threatened, and it was her fault. Now that cannot be right. We have an obligation as a group of professionals working in this space in all our different roles with all our different responsibilities to call this out for what it is, to make sure that we listen to the testimony of survivors, we listen to the testimony of parents that are having to pick the bits up after the devastation is wrought in their family and say we have to do more. So thank you all for being with us for 2 hours this afternoon. I hope you believe it's been well worthwhile. I genuinely believe that it has been. For the hundreds of people online, I hope you have gained as much and you felt as involved as the colleagues in the room have been, and I hope that we all go away from here more empowered, more invigorated to do something more, to raise our voices and to say things have got to change, and to bring about the change that reports like this demand. And reports like this demand change. Thank you very much indeed.